Hey, you sexy fiend, you, and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends brothel. I'll be your guy, but not your guest. Is that what they call them? The women who go to your bedroom, guests? I've
No,
never done it before.
guests are the people who go there, Stevie.
What do they call them? Brothel maids?
Everything has a different name, but why did you take us in this direction, Stevie?
I don't know. But I do call them no part touchers. That's what my mom calls them. So that's what I grew up with. In Catholic church we were like 1, 2, 3, don't touch my no-nos. 1, 2, 3, don't touch my no-nos.
Man, you guys couldn't have made it rhyme somehow.
I was really trying to make it rhyme, and I thought Andy's going to be so impressed, and then I failed.
Yeah.
It failed. It just made it creepier, to be honest, since it didn't rhyme. All right, so welcome to the show. My name is Stevie Collier, and I'm with my co-host Andy Peliquin, and we are honored today to have Jason Hamilton, and he is author of probably one of my favorite book covers on the market right now, and that is the Fairy Queen book series, and it is Arthurian. So if you like my books, you will definitely like Jason Hamilton's, because I prefer the Arthurian theme. I don't follow it to a T. I think if anyone knows anything about King Arthur, the legend of King Arthur, it is going to be my boy Jason Hamilton. So we're going to be talking about that today. Hey guys, actually, I need an award because I actually know what we're talking about today.
That is definitely a refreshing change, Stevie.
Yes, for one time. So how's everyone been doing?
Busy as all hell.
Yeah. How's Ebola? What happened to Ebola? It's gone. It was here and then it was gone. You know what? It's what I've read. It's always been here, but the media brought it. Made it like the new scare. Like fly flu.
Man, that was a really, really hard segue. Like a real hard left turn there, Stevie. What is up with you? Have you had too much coffee? Not enough coffee? One of the two.
It's too much coffee, and honestly, I was in there taking another one for the show, and I was like, yeah, I shouldn't do go. Coffee is a real addiction, and we need to. Okay, but anyway, so Jason, what we do I don't know if you're familiar with our podcast, but our show, whatever you want to call it now. What we do is at the very beginning, we talk about something cool that happened to us this past week or some time in the near past. So if you don't have one ready available, Andy, you do have one?
No, go ahead.
Okay, Andy, do you have one?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So this is officially going to happen tomorrow, fingers crossed. But the prequel reader magnet kind of short story, I say short story, for the new sci-fi series is going to be finished and sent off to beta readers. And when I set out to write it, it was going to be a cool, 15, 20,000 words. It's probably going to end up around 50,000 words because I am chronically incapable of writing short. But I mean, it's a super complex story. It's the story of how this character goes from a junkie to becoming a hitman for the government. That's kind of a lot of steps to go through. And so it's how he gets clean and all of that. So it is a fascinating story, something that I didn't want to rush. So I ended up expanding to around 50,000 words, but it's going to be very cool. And hopefully it'll be available on BookFunnel and Story Origin and all those other apps.
You're on Story Origin?
Yeah, before too late in November. Fingers crossed.
I need to get on Story Origin, don't I?
Yep.
Is it pretty good?
Yeah, it's got some stuff that BookFunnel doesn't.
Really? Is it free?
Yep.
Yeah, I have one, but I don't use it. I really need to. That's cool, man. I feel like your writing is just your excuse to do research. Is what it seems like.
I think my writing is like I do so much research that it informs the writing, or like everything that I do adds on something new to the story, that it ends up getting so much longer, because it's like every time I do research about a character or a situation, like this whole getting clean thing, that's not an easy process. I've winnowed it down to maybe 2,000 words, his whole getting clean process. But we're talking a thing that would, take people weeks or months to do. So it's like, it's every time that I learn about something new, it just makes the story grow a little bit bigger.
Definitely. And you can add it to your repertoire of things you can talk about. I was going to say, is there like a scene where he deals with like drug gangsters or something?
Yeah, totally. The opening scene is him begging a junkie for like anything, or begging a drug dealer for anything, because he needs to get his fix. Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah, exactly. So
hold on, my cat just opened the bathroom. 1 second.
The story is basically how he goes from the lowest point in his life, as a drug addict, to a sort of a high, in the sense of he is, he has a purpose. He has this job, very well paid job for the Protection Bureau, the government. But at the same time, the person he was before goes through some pretty hard knocks to where he ends up, and it's he changes a lot, evolves a lot over the course of the story. And so I think it's going to be a really, really interesting sort of evolution of this character that readers, when they dive into the story, into book one straight away, they'll want to know a little bit more about how he actually ended up where he was. And that's what this one's all about.
Is it so is the genre you're putting it in, is it prepared for something as serious? Because I know I'm writing in a less serious space opera, and it's not nearly as, I guess it could be, but from what I've heard, it's not as serious. Like,
I'm not sure. I don't know if that's what it's going to be, but it's the story that needed to be told.
Oh, I love that. It gave me chills. It's like poetry. I'm posting this to Facebook. Not like what you said. So Jason, did you figure out your cool thing for the week or the pack? Okay,
yes,
cool.
I did. I got this ring 3D printed here, if you can kind of see it. This is a ring that I have made from, it belongs to the superhero organization in the books I haven't written yet.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of like a Green Lantern kind of thing.
Ooh.
And I've had the design for a while, and I haven't quite written the books, but if you know anything about my work, you know that I was inspired by Brandon Sanderson in making all of my stuff part of the same sort of universe, even though they're very different series.
Okay.
Well, not everything Brandon Sanderson writes. It's the same universe, but
yeah, I think we know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so like Mistborn, Stormlight Archive, those are all like different planets in the same universe. Anyway, so I was inspired by that a long time ago, and so that's kind of what I ended up putting together. And I have this organization that part of it is like a time traveling bureau, and they all wear rings like this. So I've had that design. I just recently got it 3D printed, and it was delivered. It's pretty sweet.
How much did that cost?
Like $25, and this is gold-plated brass.
Wow.
So they 3D print it, and then they played it with the gold brass.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. For $25, that just seems almost impossible.
It is. Well, I had to also pay someone on Fiverr to do the design, the 3D design, because I have no 3D design skills.
I got you. That's cool. And so do these superheroes, I don't want to offend you by saying, are they like the Green Lantern Corps? What'd I say?
Corpse.
Oh, I meant core. I've got on my brain.
They have some similarities, like the ring, obviously, but the rings they don't do anything that the Green Lantern rings do. They're more of a time traveling device / communication device / well, that's mostly it.
Cool, man. Cool. We need more superhero books, I think. They were really popular, and then they fell off the face of the earth. It's like all the superheroes went into hiding, kind of. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I have some ideas there. It's good. It's still ways off right now because I'm still writing Arthurian fantasy, and probably will for a while. But I have some ideas that I want to do. Like, I want to be able to like write some short stories based on actual people who might be dealing with some kind of issue, and have like superhero-ize them, and do something like that.
Superhero what?
Like superhero-fy.
Oh, okay.
Like their story, just take inspiration from it and make something superhero-y out of it. But that's a ways down the road because I haven't even written any superhero stuff yet. So
I got you. Dang it! Now you kind of want me. You guys want to hear the story idea I just came up? It's called A Boy and His Hoe. No joke. A Boy and His Hoe.
You are a fool, Stevie.
Oh man. And I did it with the girlfriend, and I was like, I can make a story about anything. It doesn't have to be very good, but I can. And then I came up with a story that was actually decent. Like, I really enjoyed it. and it was just about a boy and his hoe, and this hoe can talk, and it's like got a British accent. It's super sassy. Wow, that coming out loud just sounded like just shit. But anyway, in my head, it's funny. Don't worry about me. I'm moving on. So my good news of the week. Thank you, Jason, for sharing, man. My good news of the week, and this is for all you people that have read the Jigsaw Blade. The heroes are busy. Yeah, they are. I was able to write the word gooch into my book finally. Yes, I did it. Jason's like, what the hell is he talking about? So, Jason, I made the word gooch very popular in my last series. But okay. Yeah, well, really, there is meaning behind me saying, like, I finally was able to write gooch. I got my groove back, and now the words are coming out easy again. And what it took was, as I always tell myself, is just you got to relax, write what you want to read, write what you would read. And I came up with some really cool mech ideas. So we have Jack, who is in the Jackal, which is outdated. I always have the main hero have the weapon or the idea, the thing that's supposed to be powerful, just complete garbage. And he's fighting tiger mechs, serpent mechs, and then one I call the golem mech, which is super cool. It's like a tank, you know. A golem is an ancient. Damn it, was it shaman? I can't remember now. Andy, you looking it up?
A golem?
Oh no, it's a Jewish.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jewish. Okay. Anyway, I just think it's super cool. I'm having a lot of fun with it. The good thing about science fiction is you are able to kind of play on that a man saves the woman kind of thing. And I know a lot of people don't like that, but in science fiction, it's mostly men. So you can actually write to that. And it's kind of fun. It's I think it's interesting, but I can't just not write strong female characters. So when I say the man saves the woman, I'm not saying they're not strong female characters, but I do like that. Well, it's kind of like classic, you know, the knight saves the princess from the dragon kind of thing. And
we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Oh, let's do it. In fact, that's a good segue into it. But yeah, so my good news of the week is I said last week that my grandma went down from stage 3 to stage 2 cancer, which was wonderful. That's my best news of the year. So if I don't have good news, I'll just revert back to that. And yeah, so good news is I got my groove back. Writing is going well, and I started a new business for my law of attraction side. I don't know if anyone here is interested in the law of attraction, but yeah, let me know and I'll give you my other YouTube. So, which is, that's other good news. The YouTube is kind of kicked off for some reason. So good news. Very blessed, feeling blessed. # blessed, Andy.
Your law of attraction YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's so at the beginning of the month it was at 60 subscribers and then it jumped up to 100. 98. But I think by the end of the night I might be 100. Yeah, I just kind of found my own voice, you know, and I just like, you know what, people want you to be a certain way and just screw it, just be yourself. And that's actually when people started, the views went up even higher than they were. So I'm really enjoying it.
Interesting.
Happy with life is what I would say. I see my name a lot in, I don't think he's talking about the kind of, I don't know what the heck they're talking about. Andy, what are they talking about in chat?
They were talking about the whole hose thing.
Hose. Oh, boy and his hoe. I should have clarified that the hoe is a tool, the farming tool. That is what I meant. I should have probably clarified that at the very beginning. So today
I was wondering that for
my God.
I figured it out.
This whole time. No, it is so on my grandpa's farm, I found this hoe and it was broken. If you went like this to it, it looked like it had a mouth. So it's like, it's like a boy and his hoe, and the hoe talks, but then over time it turns into a sword. So, and it becomes like this magical sword. It can become a pole arm, stuff like that. And he doesn't have knight blood, but this sword, having a sword, people automatically guess you're a knight. So anyway, that was a cool story. I'll probably write it for free and give it away for free for a newsletter thing or something for fun. So today we're talking about, the legend of King Arthur, as you can tell by the title in our video. And first of all, guys, thank you so much. We have 10 viewers. Remember, Andy, when we first started, man?
I do remember.
We're just talking to ourselves, but we really appreciate all of you. We're glad you're here, and you're very welcome. Anyway, Andy, take us away.
Well, so it's actually an interesting topic that you might have some words on, but the Arthurian legend is so interesting. It's definitely not the first. So I thought it was sort of the first of its kind, but people have told me that it's not. But it's probably one of the most famous of the legends, because it's got something that maybe it brings all these amazing elements together. But you've got the magical sword, you've got the wizardly powerful mentor figure, you've got this noble king, you've got these virtuous knights, this kingdom that sort of like a place of goodness and light in a world full of evil. Like it combines all of these things together, and so it's been how many hundreds of years, Jason, since this legend first came into being?
Well, that is a tricky question. It's been about 1,500 years.
There we go. So right there, it's been a long time, and yet people are still putting out new Arthurian stuff. I mean, King Arthur, the Guy Pearce movie is the latest thing, and hey, that was hella fun. Some weird twists on Arthurian stories, but it was it was fun. So why is it? What do you think is, Jason, about the Arthurian legend that has persisted so much?
So I've done a lot of research into the Arthurian legend, going all the way back to like where it came from and like what kind of prompted it. And first of all, the legend as it first appeared is unrecognizable to what we would think of today. But I like to, we were talking about superheroes earlier.
Mm-hmm.
King Arthur is kind of the superhero of the medieval world. His story kind of emerged and may or may not be based on an actual person. That's not really clear. But if such a person did exist, he wouldn't have been a king. He didn't have a round table, didn't have a lot of things. But there is evidence that there was like a guy who fought off the Saxon invasion that was happening around the late 5th, early 6th century. Because at that time, the Romans had left England. They had pulled out, and it basically had left this abandoned civilization. And that's where we start getting the Dark Ages, right? Where without the Romans there, things kind of spiraled out of control, and the Saxons started invading. And so, like, the Britons kind of needed a hero to rally behind, and there is evidence that there was someone, or maybe several people, who fought back the Saxon invasion and kind of delayed it for a long time. And that's when these legends sort of started to spring up, right? Because it was this moment of like hope for these natives of Britain at the time. And of course, the Saxons kept on invading, and a couple centuries later, they'd basically taken over, and that's who all of us are descended from, probably. But he kind of became this beacon of hope of like just a better time of like where, and also a sense of ancestral connection to this person. And he's basically, becomes the superhero of that age. And it's around the 15th or 16th century that his story really blossoms, and the sort of, I guess you could call it, canon of what we think of the Arthurian legend today was really established around that time. But that's like 1,000 years later.
Yeah.
So it's been very interesting. And of course, we've seen kind of a renaissance of it in the last 100 years or so.
Now, so there was sort of a thing going around when I was, growing up, first exposed to the legend, that it could have been based around sort of Alfred the Great. How factual is that, or how likely is that?
Well, I don't remember too much. Sorry, my history about Alfred the Great. He is, if we're looking for a source of the legend, we're not going to find one.
Okay.
Right. There are many people. Alfred the Great. There's another guy called Cerdic of Wessex, and a guy named Aurelius Ambrosius.
Mm-hmm.
couple other names in there that you could name of people who might possibly maybe have influenced the legend, or and it could be like a combination of people.
Okay.
Over time, Alfred the Great is certainly one of them. But it's one of those things that if you look at the literature for King Arthur and just go back step by step, you'll find that it just grows just a little bit with every telling, right? The first person to really popularize it was a guy named Geoffrey of Monmouth, who wrote History of the Kings of Britain. And he was the one that basically turned Arthur into a king and made him into this, like, basically this super king that conquered everybody. He goes up, he's like conquering Norway and Iceland. He goes all the way to Rome and is like conquering Rome. And the only reason he doesn't do that is because Mordred, who in this case is not his son, has taken over the kingdom behind his back and married his wife.
Yeah.
But there's no Lancelot, there's no round table. Like, there's a lot of these components missing, which didn't come until a little while later, mostly from French writers, ironically. So
Interesting.
There's a lot of cool history behind all this stuff. I've really been diving into it.
What got you interested in it?
That's a good question, because I'm honestly not so sure. I'm a very ambitious person. So when I set out to write an Arthurian story, I was like, I should just make this a whole, like, Marvel universe kind of thing, where we have like a series about Lancelot, a series about Sir Gawain, a series about Sir Kay, all these different things. I may still end up doing that. I do plan on writing a series after this, the one that I'm releasing and working on now, set in the same universe. But just as I was kind of getting into that, I was just like, well, okay, if I'm doing that, then I gotta work out the whole story, because the word I like to use right now is definitive. Like, I want to kind of write the definitive version of these myths of our generation, right? Because that's something that's happened several times throughout history, is someone kind of takes all the myths together and just puts them all into one work. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. I'm not trying to do any sort of recreation of the Arthurian myths, or a lot of people do like Arthur in space, or Arthur in or like Arthur's descendants, or various fresh takes on stuff, and that's all great. There's a time and a place for that, but I'm trying to go to what's at the core of the myth. And so because of that, I just started doing a whole bunch of research, and it was kind of a rabbit hole that I fell down, and I'm still doing it. So
do you believe after you're done with the series, are you done with the series?
I'm about halfway through the series.
Okay, so after the series, will you continue with your research for fun?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Because the Arthurian genre is such a cool, niche genre, I decided to really go all out. So I created a website around it.
Oh, cool.
I got some writers who are not fiction writers, but just people who are interested in the legend, and we're collaborating on blog content and stuff like that. There's informational content on there. I'm trying to create, and this is something that's going to probably be years in the making, and I'm okay with being down with that. I'm trying to make the definitive Arthurian experience, right? Not just with the fiction books, but with the website and everything. It's a lot of fun.
Do you have the website right now?
Yeah. Is there a way to show it?
You can do it on, if you want, you could share it to the YouTube chat if you have it up.
Hang on.
But also, have you read the Death of Arthur?
Yeah, I have.
What was that like? I haven't read it.
So that's probably the most definitive version that we have right now.
It is. I actually own it in French, but if you have a hard time reading Shakespearean English, it's the same in French. And actually, we had to read. Oh man, I cannot remember the name of it, but we had to read Shakespearean French in college. And I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. I can't even read this in English. I have to say, if there's one thing in this world that made me more fluent in French, it was having to read Shakespearean French, because then you have to ask, pourquoi, comment ça veut dire? What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And then through the conversations of just reading that, so I kind of one day, when my French gets a little bit better, to try and tackle the death of Arthur, or le mort d'Arthur. Another thing is I have this really weird thing in me that sounded weird.
Yeah, that really
did. We would be drinking bad right now, man. What was I gonna say? Oh, I have this weird habit that if there's a book out there and it's not in the original language, I don't want to read it, and I don't know why. So that means I can't read the Odyssey, the Iliad. I mean, I don't know. Of course, I get over it because I'm never going to learn Greek, probably, or ancient Greek, right? Because there's two forms of Greek and ancient Greek, from my ignorance of Greek. But anyway, is there anything so with these books, besides the ones obviously in space, but the older ones and the ones that were trying to maybe, I guess, create history, do they combat each other in areas a lot?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of contradiction between different versions of stuff. So what I'm trying to do is sort of stitch together. It's a combination of like what's well known. So Le Mort d'Arthur is probably where we get most of the well known elements that we have of the Arthurian legends today. Like if we were to call one book like the Arthurian story, it would be that one. So I'm drawing a lot from that one in particular. But I'm also trying to take elements of a lot of the other myths that have like stories or parts that don't quite fit into Le Mort d'Arthur, and try to find a way to incorporate them. Because I'm trying to do this as a more of a shared universe across multiple series, I have more room to fit different things in like that, right? I'll give you one example. In a lot of the earlier myths, Arthur really isn't a king. He's just sort of this folk hero who goes into supernatural places and does various quests. And so what I'm trying to do is I've got a series I'm going to be doing after the Fairy Queen, where it's basically a young Arthur doing a lot of these things. I made it so he's like not wanting to be king. He took the sword and the stone and then basically is just off on his own doing whatever he wants. And a lot of us just like, folky hero quest type of stuff before he decides to become king. And that's sort of just in homage to a lot of these earlier myths where he wasn't a king yet. He was just sort of this hero.
Does he get the sword at a young age?
Yeah, 15 in my version. In fact, that's my short story, my free short story that you can get.
So your book has King Arthur in it?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a theme. It's actually King Arthur.
It is actually King Arthur, yes.
So
he's more of a supporting role in my book, but yeah.
Supporting role. Okay. So is there some kind of feeling of responsibility that you get taking up the torch and writing a King Arthur book that will probably be, here forever if people are looking up King Arthur books? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I try as much research into it as possible. And probably some of these my little, like something. More. What was that, Andy?
You broke up there just a little bit.
Oh.
We didn't say anything. Whatever you said was probably very, very intelligent. We just didn't hear it because it was choppy.
Yeah. Andy, I have another question, but I was going to give you a chance.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Could you tell us a little bit about Camelot?
What about it?
No, it's broad, but like, is there multiple forms of Camelot, or was it, one with no contradiction? This was how Camelot was.
So Camelot emerged in the literature kind of late. Arthur had a capital, and I'm forgetting what the name of it was in the earlier myths, but it wasn't called Camelot.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember at what point it ended. It was somewhere in the 12th century is when Camelot became a thing. I don't really remember what text it was. But depictions of what Camelot was, that can vary from person to person, but it's generally what you might expect. This capital of Arthur's empire that basically, it's this sort of paragon of order and
so kind of
chivalry and what?
So kind of like ancient Rome.
A little bit, yeah, but for England.
It reminds me of the Gardens of Babylon? It's one of the wonders in the world.
The Hanging Gardens.
The Hanging Gardens. What it reminds me of, Camelot. I have this like really romantic idea of what Camelot was, because that was one of the first animated movies I watched as a kid, and I was in love. That was probably one of my first fantasy movies. That and King Arthur. One, because there wasn't a lot of singing in it, which was like, this is my movie as a kid. So actually, was there any singing in it at all?
There was. Are you talking about Quest for Camelot?
No,
animated
Sword in the Stone.
Sword in the Stone. Yeah.
There was the magic song.
Oh yeah, where they're cleaning the house.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that one's good though.
That's a classic.
Yeah. What was the owl's name? It was like some kind
Archimedes.
Archimedes.
Yeah, Archimedes.
Oh, man, the owl was my favorite. But that was my first. As a kid, you think that was the first King Arthur, and that there was no other writings before that. And then I remember being in the library, because I spent a lot of time in the library as a kid. Believe it or not, I think that's where a lot of authors spent their time as kids, just hiding away in the library at lunch or at PE or whatever. But I was walking through and I was like, oh, King Arthur. And I was like, this is a big ass book. What's this doing here? So, and then that's when I realized, oh, there's more to this whole Arthur thing than, so was he homosexual? It's a question you knew we were probably going to get to. What is your personal plan or idea about that?
I don't think
it doesn't really matter. It's just, I'm curious.
I mean, he married Guinevere.
He married Guinevere.
Who are we talking about? Arthur?
Yeah. Are you? Oh my God. I'm thinking of King Alexander.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of
Alexander the Great. Yeah.
Alexander the Great was supposedly homosexual, right?
I've heard that. Yeah.
Okay. No. King Arthur. And then I think either you or Andy was talking about that Gwen. Can we call her Gwen?
Sure.
Gwen. That she was a prostitute or a slut or something.
Well, she had the affair with Lancelot, which is what she's probably best known for. I don't know about. I mean, her background is just as a noble lady. There's actually not a lot about her. Surprise, from medieval text, right? She pops up at some point. She's just like Arthur's wife.
Ah, I got you.
And she's just there. And then eventually there was some expansion on her. Then there are a lot of old stories where she was just like the classic damsel in distress that Lancelot had to save. And supposedly that's how the whole relationship between them kind of got started.
So what is all this hubbub about Lancelot? Now, we know King Arthur, but I would argue that the Lancelot guy, he's almost as popular, if not more popular, because of the kid. It's a fun name to say. Who is Lancelot, and what do you know about him?
Well, going back to the whole superhero idea, he embodies that more than any other character in Arthurian legends. Is like he was basically the super knight. Like no one could best him. He was good at everything he did. He was pure. He was virtuous. That is until he started having the affair with Guinevere, and it's this like tragic story that ends up being kind of the downfall of Camelot and
sort of like a parallel to the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. Sort of another
very much so, yeah.
human emotions or human desires can lead to the downfall. Sort of a cautionary tale, essentially.
It was, and like morality tales like that were quite common in during the medieval time period. But it's one that's probably been one of the most enduring themes of the Arthurian myth until today. Like, that's one part of it that is in Guinevere, and it usually results in the downfall of Camelot.
Does Lancelot die by the hand of King Arthur?
He, in most versions, he does not. That's another story I have in the back of my mind that I don't really want to talk about right now because it's going to be a long way off when I write it, but I really want to write it.
Yeah. So what is the Legend of the Round Table? Do you know anything about it? Something special?
It's a round table.
Sure.
I just finished reading an old French, so it was an English translation of an old French text called Roman de Brute or something like that. There's the first text where the round table was ever mentioned.
Okay.
So that was pretty cool. The round table is basically this thing. It was made as a round table so that there would be no equals. Everyone would be equal.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That's awesome.
See, that doesn't make any sense because he can't sit in the middle of the table. So he's got to sit somewhere, and then there's going to be someone on his right and someone on his left. Like,
Yeah, but at least it's better than having a head of a table, right?
Yeah, it's symbolic, but still, it's like whoever sits on King Arthur's right is obviously, the number one, and whoever sits on his left is the number two.
Yep.
Why you got to make things difficult, Andy?
You have no idea how much time I've spent thinking about that. I'm trying to think. All right, the only way that it could be fully equal is if he sits in the middle, like a hole in the middle of the table, and then everybody is equally as close. But otherwise,
nope. You just gave me an idea. Because I'd already thought about having the round table be like, because the round table was originally supposed to fit 150 people.
Are you kidding me?
I did the math on that. It would have to be about the size of Stonehenge in order to accommodate that many people.
You'd have to yell.
Yeah. So I thought, well, what if you made it like so it's not a solid piece of round wood, but it's like hollow in the center, so it's like a disc, and you can like go into the middle of it so servants could like go and stuff. But then now I'm thinking that I should just put Arthur in the center.
It's like playing telephone. You're trying to create these battle plans and you accidentally like enter the wrong country and take over just because of that damn big ass table. So I have to say, Jason, I'm having a blast. We got to have you back because this is not enough to handle the Legend of King Arthur. I do have one last question, but before we get to that, I do want to point out that this is probably the coolest video title that we have in the Fantasy Fiends podcast series. It's so cool. Andy, good job. It's cool. So, Jason, do you believe that King Arthur existed?
I do. I alluded to this earlier. There is some evidence that there was an Arthur figure, at least, and may have even been named Arthur, or at least a Old English / maybe Latin variant of it, because there is evidence around the time that he is supposed to have existed that there was a surge in names of people naming their kids Arthur, which I think is interesting.
That makes sense. Why would they do that,
Yeah, exactly. But the answer is kind of yes and no, because yes, I do believe there was an Arthur figure, but no, in the sense that he would not have looked anything like we imagine him now.
Not beautiful.
No, probably not blonde either. He would have been someone from Wales. And
what color hair do they have usually?
Well, it would have been darker, all like the Celtic bloodline, but the blonde hair comes from the Saxons who invaded. But he wouldn't have been a king. If he was anything, he would have been kind of like a war chief or something like that. Guinevere probably, well, there might be something to Guinevere, but there's no Lancelot, no knights, no Round Table, no Camelot. None of those things that we think of when we think of Arthur would have existed. But there is a cool story. There's a historical battle that is called the Battle of Badon Hill. That it's a real thing. We don't know where it happened, but there's enough mentions of it in history of that time period that we know it's a kind of thing. And whatever happened there, the Saxons were pushed back so violently that they didn't try to keep invading Britain for like 100 years after that. So, and then there's evidence that in that battle there was a single guy who may have spearheaded the success of that battle, which is really cool.
Cool.
And that is, whoever that guy was probably where the stories came from. People have, of course, added to the stories over time. But, everything kind of starts somewhere. And so, yeah, I do believe that there was an Arthur figure.
And can you, what is the name of your website for your Legends of, why am I trying to say Legend of Zelda? What is the website to King Arthur thing that you're making?
It is called arthurlegends.com.
How did you get that domain? That's awesome.
I know, right? Like Arthurian Legends was taken.
Why? They missed out.
But Arthur Legends was not. So it's arthurlegends.com. I've got a short story there that's basically my version of the Sword in the Stone story that people can pick up.
Yeah, guys, go check out this website. It looks really, really professional. Yeah, I'll be hitting that up soon because I genuinely find this topic interesting. Okay, so let's get to the reading. Andy, you good with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we are reading an excerpt from Fairy Queen, is the prologue. And so how this works, Jason, is usually we have the author be the director, and you just tell us what parts to play, what you want to read, stuff like that.
Okay.
You want to be King Arthur if he's in here?
He's not in here.
Oh.
He has a small role in this book. This is kind of it seems like an original story. It's actually based on an old 16th century book called The Fairy Queen, which I studied in college.
Oh, what'd you study in college?
English.
English. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect for what you're doing now.
It is kind of.
Yeah.
So it's loosely based on that. But let's see. There are. Trying to remember where I've got the book right here.
So there's Gloriana and Alice Vivian
/ Lady of the Lake, who incidentally we're going to read about a shiny gold ring in this prologue. That's this.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, Andy, you look like a Gloriana type.
Boom. How old is she?
She's like as old as time.
Ooh, so I can do my Maggie Smith voice.
Yes, please.
Sure, go ahead. Stevie, if you want to be Alice / Vivian, I'll be Tom Thumb if he shows up. And
the narrator?
I can be the narrator.
Take it away.
Okay, so I'm two characters, or is it one character?
It's one character.
And what's
she goes by Alice and also by Vivian.
Okay, and she's young?
She's younger, yeah. She's like 20.
Cool, let's do it.
Okay. If it weren't for the knowledge of what was about to come through the shining tear in the fabric of time, the Fairy Queen might have called its appearance beautiful. The light streaming out of the tear cast a dancing golden green pattern across the trees surrounding the dark clearing, the spectacle even more glorious at night. But Gloriana knew that nothing of beauty would come from today's events. That's you, Stevie.
Okay, sorry. When you said you needed help,
said a voice from beside her.
I never knew it was this bad.
Gloriana glanced to one side, temporarily ignoring the ever-expanding breach. It would still be a few moments before it was large enough for anything to come through.
Alice?
She said to the woman by her side.
Or should I say Vivian now?
You should,
said the woman with a nod. Well, she was more of a girl, really, with long blonde hair and a lithe body, clothed in white robes. The last time she'd seen Alice, she'd kept her hair short.
I also go by Lady of the Lake these days.
How very mysterious.
Alice, or Vivian, did not seem to share her smugness. She looked straight ahead at the opening breach.
What can I do to help?
Gloriana glanced back at the ribbon of light as it slowly expanded.
Just keep them off my back until I can close it.
And exactly why aren't you closing it now?
It does not work that way. I cannot heal what has not broken. Once the tear is fully formed, I can begin to sew it back together. But I will need you to assist my armies in eliminating any threats that come through until I can stop the flow.
Not much of an army,
said Vivian, turning to stare back behind them. Unfortunately, it was true. Gloriana's strength had waned in recent years. Few came to pledge their loyalty anymore, not since the dragon had emerged in the north, and the first tears had begun. Now people would rather avoid the Forest of Arden than pass through it, and with this being the latest in a series of breaches to the other world, many of her trusted knights, her friends, had perished at the hands of the supernatural. The Order of Maiden Glory was now reduced to almost nothing, which was why she needed Vivian's help. Of course, she had other aids at her disposal besides her knights, but would it be enough? The breach in front of her pulsed slightly and widened. It was almost time.
They will do their duty.
Gloriana straightened and readied herself, feeling the wind pick up through the clearing and gently whip at her hair. Looking back at Vivian, she added,
Can I count on you to do yours?
Vivian braced herself, keeping her eyes on the golden-green tear in space.
Gloriana, I know we may have had our differences in the past, but you can count on me to do what I can.
Good.
Gloriana began gathering the magics around her. This breach was one of the larger ones she'd faced. She would need all her strength to close it. Raising one arm, she cried,
Prepare yourselves! Defend your queen!
The clink of armor and the unsheathing of swords was their reply. The Order of Maiden Glory was ready. And with a burst of light and magic, the breach caved open. Immediately, Gloriana summoned her magic, raising her hands in front of her and mentally grasping for the edges of the tear. She had to close this one as fast as she could. Her knights rushed forward, the sound of their plate armor creating a chorus of clashes that could inspire songs, if only there were more. Vivian also darted forward, bereft of any armor, but pulling forth a great sword of exquisite workmanship. If Gloriana had not been so focused on the breach, she might have inspected the sword more closely, or gazed at the ring on Vivian's finger as it began to glow a bright golden yellow. But she had no time to dwell on such things. In that moment, the first of the monsters hurtled through the breach. It was a great serpent, but with giant arms near its front, and what appeared to be hundreds of tiny appendages like smaller snakes attached to its body. Its hissing echoed through the clearing and beyond. The Order of Maiden Glory charged. Other forms came through the breach, beings of all shapes and sizes. Horrid beasts like the serpent or great spiders rushed at the Order of Maiden Glory. Others, appearing more human in shape, also broke through the barrier between worlds. Some of them attacked, though many did not. They were the smart ones. They did what Gloriana would do in their situation, hide and bide their time. But she could not worry about them right now. She had to close the breach. She pulled on the powers of nature and life that surrounded her, using them to tug on the edges of the tear to heal this wound in the fabric of all they represented of life and time. The gap began to close. The Fairy Queen remained only vaguely aware of the chaos that surrounded her as she strained herself to close the breach, of Vivian stepping forward and slashing at the nearest opponent with her sword. The beast was like a dog, but with two heads, and it lunged at Gloriana's former school companion. Vivian dodged in the blink of an eye, appearing behind the two-headed hound before it even knew she was there. By the faith, she was fast. Vivian had obviously picked up a few tricks since Gloriana had last seen her. As Vivian drove her blade into the ground, a hawk cried overhead, swooping in low to rake its talons over the face of another beast. This one, a one-eyed cyclops of legend. Then a great brown bear charged into the beast and knocked it over, even as it clutched at its eye from the hawk's attack. Other animals barreled into the beasts emerging from the tear, and others chased after those who chose to flee. Gloriana smiled. The forest had come to her aid. The breach was slowly closing, though, as she had expected, it was far larger than any Gloriana had encountered thus far, and this many creatures of evil had not stepped through since the first breach. They must have been waiting. But between her order of maiden glory, Vivian and the creatures of the forest, they were holding them back, barely. Enough, at least, that she could do her job. Gloriana closed her eyes and focused all her willpower on rejoining the edges of the tear.
Gloriana!
Cried Vivian. It was all the warning she got. Not pausing to think, Gloriana threw herself backward just as a huge claw tore through the place where she had been. Her eyes shot open to reveal her attacker. For a moment, the tear ceased to close as the Fairy Queen lost her concentration.
You!
Her heart chilled. Before her stood a terrible sight. This beast had the shape of a woman, but her skin was a ghostly gray. Her human legs ended in the paws of a bear, and she had great eagle talons in place of hands. Her pointed teeth and eyes gleamed in the light of the moonlight, and her black hair shone with a golden circlet as she stood silhouetted against the light of the breach. She was accompanied by 3 dark knights, mirrors of Gloriana's own maiden glory, or order of maiden glory. She could see only their eyes, the rest of their faces covered by black cloth. Let's see.
I can do it.
Yeah.
Gloriana.
That's awesome. I should hire you.
Thank you.
The demon woman croaked, a thin smile showing on her colorless lips.
Diuessa.
Gloriana replied, breathless. The sins were here. Now everything made sense. Why so many demonic horrors had escaped through the breach this time. Why they had seemed prepared for the doors to their world to open. They had a leader.
Nicely done.
You have done the King Arthur world a justice. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm. That was very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the demon part. I was hoping I could do that part.
I was gonna go for something like a little bit like higher pitched and like witch, but then like crackle.
What's that?
I was gonna go for like a witchy, like ah, but then with a little bit more crackle to it, but I didn't get it. So you got it right.
Oh, okay. Well, that would have been good too. Well, awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate your time here.
Yeah,
where can people find you?
So again, the website's arthurlegends.com. We have a Facebook page. There's an Instagram, and I just write under Jason Hamilton, so all my books are under that name. So look me up.
You can find his books on Amazon. Just look up Jason Hamilton. That's how I found him. And remember, that is the Fairy Queen series. Highly suggested, especially if you're looking for a slice of King Arthur pie. Doesn't that make you hungry, Andy?
It does.
You want some male pie?
No.
Are you sure? Jason's like, I do. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Awesome. Well, that is it for this Fantasy Fiends podcast. Andy, who do we have next week?
We have someone really cool. Which means I can't remember who.
He's so cool. The name has just disappeared.
I'll tell you right now. Oh, Aaron Hodges.
Oh, I know Aaron.
Yeah, he'll be coming back on.
I actually met him earlier this year in New Zealand. I was there with my wife.
Wow.
So,
like, y'all just messaged like, "Hey, let's hang out."
Yeah, like we just got lunch.
Wow, that's awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
That's cool. He's a really cool guy. This is the dragon guy, right, Andy?
Yeah.
Yeah, dragon guy. It's going to be cool to be known as the dragon guy. Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks so much for being here, man.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we'll definitely have to have you back for your next release. Just get with Andy on that so we can talk more King Arthur. Well, that is it for this Fantasy Fiends podcast, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming and staying at the Fantasy Fiends Inn. We hope you enjoyed your stay, and we will see you next Thursday for a very spooky, spooktacular podcast. It's like our third Halloween podcast, isn't it, Andy?
I think so.
Jesus, you're getting old, Andy. I'm kidding. All right, guys, that's it. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next Thursday.
Good night.
See ya.